Welcome to our first COD Build event. We have approximately 350 plus registrations. And when you look at the demographics of that, we have a very, very good combination in terms of people representing service providers, people representing large vendors, people representing small vendors, people representing system integrators, and some of the research community as well. So we're happy with the turnout we have for the COD build. I see many faces here who have been already contributing to COD for multiple years. And so I want to especially thank you for all your contributions. So whatever we are going to present today is essentially your work, and want to appreciate. And some of you are new, and we really hope you will find COD as one of the most exciting platforms, open source platform that you want to engage with, want to be part of, and start contributing as well. Okay, so again, thanks to our sponsors as well, QCT, Arisent, and Adara. Special thanks to, of course, QC team for providing the facility, providing a lot of logistical support, and we really appreciate what you have done for the build event. We could not have done it without you. Okay, so as you know, that ONF also has a large ecosystem of, depending on how we look at it, close to 200 companies. And today when I'm saying we did this and we did that, remember that we doesn't mean only ONF, those 40 people. It means the community as a whole. So I'm speaking on the behalf of the community, what we have been able to accomplish during the last few years. I want to especially acknowledge our service provider partners. We have 8 of them. They provide significant funding, people, use cases, opportunities to do trial, and they play a very important role in ONF. So, and some of you are here and really appreciate all your help and support. Boy, this is the special effect or something wrong. Okay. Of course, we also have a number of vendors who also are our partners, and we value their partnership as well and their contributions and participation. And you can see the board very heavily represented by service providers and a number of other service providers and other partners. Okay, so now let me give you kind of a state of COD, and basically what is the key message is that COD is emerging as a platform for what can be thought of as the new network edge. And I will try to explain that in just a minute, what I mean by that. But clearly, people are looking at more and more COD as the enabling platform for the new network edge. Here are a couple of analyst reports that have said something interesting about COD, and I thought I can start with that. So if you look at Michael Howard, who is an industry, pretty leading analyst for many, many years, that study says 70% of operators will deploy COD. Then there's another study that came out from Heavy Reading that says 40% of all end user traffic will go over COD. When you take a minute and think about it, it's pretty amazing. For a platform which is only barely 2 or 3 year old, an open source platform, for these industry analyst studies to make this prediction is pretty amazing. And remember that we as a non-profit organization were not part of these studies. They were done independently, and that is what they reported. So pretty interesting. So then the question is, why is this such a big deal? I mean, why are people saying 70% of operators will deploy it, or 40% of all user traffic will go over it? So I thought I'll tell you the little bit of that journey in just a minute. I mean, one slide. So the first one is 3 years ago when we started to work on COD, and the person responsible for it is right here. That is Tom Anschutz and his buddy from AT&T, Al Blackburn, who were AT&T at that point was in this mindset of wanting to reinvent the central office, and they were asking the question that how would, if Google or Amazon were building a central office, how will they build it? And they had a particular idea, and that kind of set us on this path to building COD. Then as the time went on, AT&T and other providers, including cable operators, got interested in CORD, and they thought CORD could be a platform for not only kind of the residential, GPON, but also for XGS-PON, cable connection like virtual CMTS, 5G and application. So that gave another momentum to CORD as a platform that can support these kinds of access technologies. Then there is a group of people that are very excited about mobile edge computing, and they started to say, oh, we can do mobile edge computing on a platform like CORD as well. And now recently there are people that are talking about fog computing, and if you look at the heart of that, you again need a platform that is like a CORD that could enable the fog computing. So when you look at all of these trends that are going on in the industry, you find that CORD can be a very important enabling platform for all of this. Another way, so that is the platform for the new network edge. Another way to look at it is service providers are building what can be thought of as a multi-tier cloud, okay? All the way from their users to edge cloud to telco cloud to public cloud, okay? And at the edge of the network, there are some fundamental transformations that are happening, right? I mean, some of them I already mentioned, enabled by 5G, XGS-PON, some of the new applications, IoT and all of that is happening. And for that, you need very special capabilities at the edge of the network, because you want to provide low latency, you want to provide very closed loop control, which can be in milliseconds as opposed to seconds. So when you're trying to do all of that, right, the edge becomes quite important, and you have to more or less reinvent the edge to be able to provide the requirements or meet the requirements that are emerging, okay? And so what we are doing is, when you look at this, yes, of course you need global automation and orchestration, but more importantly, you need a new kind of a platform at the edge who can do all these things that we are talking about. And then in the context of fog computing, what they're doing is they're pushing it all the way to the edge. The edge is extending into the enterprise as well. And when you extend the edge into the enterprise, again, you can use a platform like this. And if the time permits, I can talk about how in that fog computing setting, you can use a platform like this at the edge within the enterprise as well. Okay, so then the next question is, okay, if in all of these contexts you need a platform that can do certain things, what are the specific requirements? Okay, what do you need in order to enable all these scenarios or all these use cases? And so you can look at these requirements into two categories. One is the functionality. What does this platform need to provide in terms of functionality? And then how do we want to build this, right? And sometimes only the functionality is not important. How you build it is equally important. And I will describe what I mean in just a minute. So when it comes to functionality, obviously nobody cares about networking by itself. Networking is a platform to deliver services, and more, any service provider, any type of service providers, what they're wanting to do is to turn that into a platform for delivering innovative services that can create more revenues and can bring more value to the end customers, okay? There are many different configurations. When we talk about the edge, sometimes the edge is very, very constrained physically, and so you should be able to have a very small footprint. In other cases, the edge may be a big central office where you can have many racks and you can deploy a larger configuration, okay? So you need something that can scale from small to large. Another thing is, there is so much innovation going on at the access level. There are different radio technologies that are emerging. There are IoT technologies. There are, going from GPON to XGS-PON. So you need to be able to plug in different types of access technologies and devices into this platform as well, and the platform should be able to support. Of course, SDN is big. You don't want closed proprietary thing that is not programmable. So what is very important is that you should be able to provide programmable control and configuration. And then, of course, economics of a data center, because you have to be very efficient in what you do. And of course, management and configuration is very important. So zero touch configuration, provisioning, and operation are quite important. So I would think of them as the functionality. These is, and again, this is only a partial list. If you sit down with a service provider, the list may go even longer. But these are kind of the highlights of what we need. But when you talk about approach, this is even more important. So for example, what you want to do on the approach side is, you don't want to build it using those same closed proprietary boxes. You want to build it with merchant silicon, white boxes, and open source. That is the current trend. There should be a community around this, because you don't want to build an open source platform for which there is no community, because it is the community that keeps the platform keep moving forward. There has to be future proof, because we cannot, as much as we think we know the services, we don't know, because people are going to invent new kinds of services, and a platform should be such that should be able to create and support new kinds of services that we cannot imagine today. And then as John Donovan once said very well in a ONS setting, that there should be some place for proprietary stuff. And he said, yeah, you can bring me proprietary stuff, but bring me that as a Tabasco sauce that I can sprinkle on my infrastructure. And I think that is how we should think about the closed proprietary stuff. There is always opportunities to have closed proprietary stuff, but that should come in small packages, but the entire infrastructure should not be built with closed proprietary boxes or solution. Okay? Am I making sense so far, communicating? Is that okay? Okay, so now what I want to do is introduce to you CORD. Many of you know this more than I do. You have been building it yourself and you have contributed to it. But I will try to introduce it from a 10,000 feet level and go a little bit deeper. And then later on, Larry is going to give a talk and he will take you another level deep into the platform architecture and so on. Okay, so again, at the edge, you see there are different types of, you have enterprises, you have mobile customers, and you have residential subscribers or customers. Those are the three classes of things. This is the edge cloud. So you can start with an empty canvas and see how you can fill it up. So the first thing is, if you are going to connect to this, you need access devices that connect to all of these, your customers, enterprise, mobile, and residential. They may come over wired interface, they may come over wireless interface. Of course, you want to connect to your other backbone network or other cloud, so you need that. And then if you are going to run any software and services, you need servers. And typically you will need more than one server, given you want to do more and more processing at the edge of the network. And then if you are going to have all of this, then it needs to be connected by some kind of switching, or you can think of that as a switching fabric. That is going to interconnect all of these devices, servers, and whatever you connect to the backbone. And then you need a software stack on top running that can turn all of this into what can be thought of as a platform for service delivery, a very programmable platform on which you can build services and enable new services as well. And then, of course, we want to create lots of services that can run at the edge of the network. Some of them services we can imagine today, but more importantly, we have to allow for services that we cannot imagine today, because there will be people that will be inventing new stuff, and we should be able to host those services on this platform. Okay, so this is kind of a very generic. Oh, there is one more block which is very important. And when you're putting all of this thing together, you should be able to either zero touch, or you may want to call it automated provisioning, configuration, and operation, so that you don't have to be constantly babysitting this, and you don't need a lot of human intervention. You should be able to do that in automated fashion as well. So these are kind of what this particular platform ought to have. And to some extent, this is what we have been building for last couple of years. So now let me take you to another level of detail and specifics in terms of what we have been building. Okay, again, start with the empty canvas. So when it comes to connecting to enterprises, I think Metro Ethernet continues to be the default way in most cases, so that's what we do. When it comes to connecting to residential, we have done GPON based OLTs, and we have done XGS-PON OLT more recently. And here is a good example. When I say we, it means the community as a whole, and Tom and AT&T have taken a big leadership there in order to build these devices like pizza devices, pizza box devices with OCP. And then if you are going to connect to 4G, 5G, or future radio networks, you need to have different types of radio access networks as well as eNodeDs, and we have worked with several of them in CORD. And then when it comes to servers, we have made a policy that we will use as much as possible open devices. So we are using OCP-based servers. We use ROADM to connect to backbone. We have also demonstrated you can use disaggregated ROADM and connect back to the backbone. And then, of course, we have also built an SDN fabric, which is leaf spine fabric, which is what typically used in data centers today. OpenFlow or P4 enable based on white boxes. ONOS is used as the SDN controller or SDN OS. And then there are many fabric applications that run on ONOS to create that fabric. Okay, so that is kind of the bottom half. On top of that, we have built a software stack. We use some off-the-shelf building blocks, that is OpenStack, Docker, starting to use Kubernetes as well. And then again, we use ONOS for the SDN control, and XOS, another software platform that we have built for service lifecycle management, service composition, orchestration, and all of that. And then there are, you will see as the time goes on that we have built another 25 services. That is kind of the today's service portfolio for residential, enterprise, and mobile. So that is the kind of the service portfolio that we have built, and that is becoming available as part of our releases. And then, of course, we are also working towards the zero touch or automated provisioning, configuration, and management. And that is done with tools such as MAS, Ansible, Docker, using some of Kubernetes and XOS as well. Okay, so you can see that we started with the requirements and thing, and now if you look at CORD today, all of this is part of CORD distribution and what the POCs we have done so far. Okay, so far so good? Making sense? Okay. Okay, so another thing is, this is, as I said, approach is as important as functionality. And in approach, what we have done is we have built with merchant silicon, white boxes, open source. Almost everything here is, in that category. Hardly any proprietary stuff, or if you are using proprietary stuff, it is in the merchant silicon or in very few places, as John Donovan said, as a Tabasco sauce. I think that is how we have used the proprietary stuff in this. Okay, so I guess I have another 20 minutes or so. Is that okay? So I want to take you through some more details. So when it comes to the fabric, again, as I mentioned, it is a leaf spine fabric built with white boxes. And when you look inside the box, it is, again, you will see it's a pretty, almost everything is open source here. So of course it is, Broadcom, Cavium, sometimes, I mean, we have done P4 based, which is barefoot silicon, but that is the silicon. On top of that, we have Open Network Linux, which is now the OCP software, and ONI for rebooting and configuration. And then for OpenFlow, we of course use the ASIC, but then OFDPA, that is the library that we get from Broadcom, again open source, mostly the bottom half is not, but otherwise open. And then Indigo OF agent. And on top of that, we use ONOS cluster as the SDN controller to control the fabric. And you can see there are many applications that we have realized that are essentially to turn this into an operational fabric on which you can write applications and services and make it usable in the CORD context. Okay, so that is kind of the quick description of fabric. And the good news is at the CORD build, you will get to hear about any of these pieces in as much detail as you like. So there are multiple sessions on Trellis, and Saurav, who is the leader who helped build this, is here. And when you go to those sessions, you can get a lot more details about it. Okay, so software stack. So let me introduce the software stack at some high level, and again you can learn more about it during the event. So again, if you start with the access devices, what you have is of course the home or the mobile devices. Then you have, I think there is no pointer here, the OLTs. So these are these pizza box devices that only do the OLT functions. Then we have Volta, which is the hardware abstraction layer on top of OLT, ONOS, and then some application. On the mobile side, you have RAN, different types of RAN, and then XRAN controller and some RAN application. And then, oh, by the way, say something about everything as a service. So let me take a step back. So what you notice in COD, we are using a particular paradigm that is something Larry Peterson has championed over the years, where we have this mindset that everything is a service. Okay, so this is a nice abstraction that is on top of a higher level abstraction beyond a container or a VM or a or a VNF. It's a higher level abstraction that allows you to deal with services rather than individual VMs or containers. Okay, and that is much more scalable and easier abstraction to deal with. And then we think of everything as a service as we build, and you will see all of these boxes that you are seeing are essentially modeled as a service. Any software in COD is modeled as a service, and that is orchestrated and managed by this platform that we have called XOS. Okay, so coming back to this, there is a switching fabric, ONOS, number of applications that I mentioned before. Then you go on the computing side, the software stack looks like server, OpenStack, Docker, and then you have number of applications or services on the top. And then there is this platform that I was mentioning before called XOS that is essentially managing all of these services and doing service composition and all of that using the same abstraction that we call services. And then it exposes some of them to the top level. And so if you have a global automation or orchestration platform, it can interface with XOS and help manage the services as well. So this is kind of very high level. I would consider a software stack. And when you listen to Larry's talk later in the afternoon, you can find out more details about this. Okay, I think I'm going to skip this. One thing I want to quickly mention is that because we have these services, and when you're trying to support a larger service like a residential subscriber as a service or something like a mobile customer, what you end up doing is you end up building what we call service graphs. So what is shown here is these are multi-tenancy services, and you can build a service graph for a particular subscriber or particular customer, and then you are served by these services. And so what is shown here is a residential use case where virtual OLT, virtual subscriber gateway, virtual router, and virtual CDN, these may be the specific services this particular customer may be using, and you construct that service graph for that particular subscriber. Okay, and you also see that things like OpenStack, ONOS, monitoring, they are also thought of as services, and they fit into this common architecture, which is we call everything as a service paradigm or architecture. And Larry will talk more about that later, so on. So when it comes to automated provisioning and configuration, again, we are using a set of tool chain that lets you do that. So for example, we use MAS to discover hardware and initial component boot, Ansible to install and configure foundational software like Docker, and then we use Docker to install and configure various COD-specific software services, software tools. And now we are trying to use Kubernetes to do some of that. And then, of course, ONOS and XOS, they do their own configuration of services and application that they support. So that is kind of the tool chain we are using today for provisioning, configuration, and operation. Okay. So again, I don't have time to go into this, but what I want to communicate at least is that at this point in time, we run many builds in order to be testing every day. And so there are half a dozen builds that we are running every night. Some of them are software based, some of them are running on physical pod. And actually I should compliment QCT has given us a pod here, and we run COD build that process every night or every day on these various pods. And fortunately, as you see, and this is maybe one snapshot, most of the time it is green, but honestly it's not that green all the time. There are lots of reds also, but you can see that it is turning more and more green with time. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so I want to make a little bit of a transition now and try to give you the context in terms of how we have progressed this in last, say, 3 years or so that we have been doing COD, like some kind of a journey. So the first thing I want to emphasize is this virtuous cycle that we really, really believe in. And actually that is what is the success of computing and computing platforms have been for last whatever 40, 50 years. That whenever you build a platform, you want to build solutions and platforms hand in hand. Because if you use code as a platform, it enables solutions. As you build those solutions, you see opportunities to make your platform better. Then you build more solutions, you again see opportunities to make your platform better, and this is the virtuous cycle that is very important, and it has paid many times in our computing history. So in the same way for CORD, we have been building multiple use cases with CORD. Residential, as I mentioned, mobile, enterprise, analytics, and all of that. So these are the different kinds of solutions we have been building using the CORD as a platform. Okay, and I want to give you some quick flavor of that. So for example, I mentioned residential CORD, where the emphasis is on the access devices and a set of services that are out there. And so two things I want to emphasize here is on the access device, our focus is on trying to turn them into like a pizza box with merchant silicon and white boxes. And then of course you have a set of services. Those are the portfolio of services. You have separated the control plane and you have implemented the control plane as a set of services that can run in software. And that is exactly what we have done. And so you can see here is the OCP certified OLT device for GPON, and there is a similar device now for XGS-PON as well. Okay. And so the net result is that you start with these very big proprietary devices, and now what we have done because of this work on residential CORD is turn it into a pizza device at the bottom. Then you have an agent that can talk to this device and speak the specific whatever that layer 2 the protocol is. And then you have this virtual OLT agent that is running outside the box. And then you have ONAS as the SDN controller. And then top of that, you have set of control application that we model as services. Okay. And now what we have done in the second stage is that rather than building this agent that is device specific, you can create a hardware level abstraction. You can have a software layer that is device independent, and you can have different types of devices that can plug into it. And we have plugged in both GPON as well as XGS-PON kinds of devices, and the rest of the software stack can remain the same. And so this is where we are today in terms of disaggregation of the OLT devices for residential CORD. Okay. Now let me briefly tell you about the M-CORD, the mobility CORD, where again the focus is that we want to interface with different types of radio technologies, disaggregated RAN, disaggregated eNodeBs, and CBRS as well. What we have done is, we have done disaggregation of RAN with RAN slicing as well. This is something very important for the 5G capabilities. And then associated with that, as you do separation of control, there are a set of services or control applications that you run in order to control the radio access network. And then we have also done disaggregation of EPC as well as some of the edge services. And they have been also implemented as software, virtualized and running in either VMs or containers. And so that is something we can use with M-CORD as well. Okay. Okay. And so these are some of the capabilities that we have demonstrated on top of the M-CORD platform. And this is something we did at MWC San Francisco. Again, if you take a minute, this is pretty amazing that on this platform we have done XRAN integration. If you are not familiar with XRAN, this is the protocol between the disaggregation of eNodeB, something very new, and I think Oz may be talking about it as part of M-CORD, open source EPC, hybrid CORD. This is in collaboration with Deutsche Telekom, where on the same platform you can do mobility as well as residential, end-to-end slicing all the way from RAN to EPC. So we have demonstrated that. CBRS and private LTE as well. And then the entire M-CORD, this is again in collaboration with Cavium, where the entire pod is built with ARM processor rather than Intel, and Cavium chipset rather than the Broadcom chipset. So having that diversity is always a good idea to be able to demonstrate. You can build it with multiple merchant silicon vendors And so that's what we have demonstrated in this context. Okay, so in the case of enterprise, the focus is less on disaggregation of edge devices, because there you use Metro Ethernet, and in Ethernet case the devices are already pretty pizza box devices. You don't need to do much work to do disaggregation. But there the focus is more on services, especially services such as virtual networks on demand, and for every virtual network being able to do some analytics, and for that virtual network being able to provide some services like firewall or load balancing and so on. So those are the kinds of things we have demonstrated in the context of enterprise CORD. Okay, so when you put all of this thing together, what you get is, this is the list of kind of various services that we have built on top of CORD, and they are starting to be available as part of the releases. And so you can see there are 25 plus services that are now part of the portfolio, and they are built for different use cases, but now they're all coming together as part of the platform. But what I should mention is that so far we have done these services with open source, and worked with a lot of communities to bring this open source into CORD. But we would love to work with any VNF vendor, whether you have open source VNF or you have a proprietary VNF. Love to find a way for your VNF to work on CORD and be able to demonstrate. So if your company builds VNFs and you think you want to work with us, we definitely will welcome that opportunity and find a way to enable your VNF to work on the CORD platform. Okay, so I want to come back to this picture just a minute. So in addition to building those RCORD, MCORD, ECORD, and ACORD, what we have been doing is we have been demonstrating all these capabilities that I talked about in different shows or different conferences or different venues. And so you can see from all the way we started in ONS 2014 or 15, and almost every 6 months or so, we have been demonstrating different capabilities of CORD as they are maturing. And the most recent has been the BBWF 2017 in Berlin, where we demonstrated Volta as well as demonstrated RCORD with a number of devices. Okay, and then we did our first CORD release approximately 18 months ago, and we have been doing releases every 4 months. And so just recently we did release 4.0, maybe a month ago or so, and now we are very close to do a mid-cycle release that we are calling 4.1, which is going to bring all the services together. But as we do these releases, what that means is that these are the capabilities that we support, and hopefully they work out of the box. And then if you need help, we are able to provide you support and so on. Okay. So let me briefly tell you how we look at 4.0 and 4.1 release. The 4.1 release will come out end of the month. So what that means is, for when you look at 4.0, the individual subsystems and the integrated platform, they are moving from what I would consider proof of concept or from the demo quality to something that you may be able to take into a field trial. I will not recommend taking it into production. Definitely that is not what I would say, but at least you may be able to do lab trial and limited field trial. That is the level of quality that we have that you can do. Oh, and by the way, it's becoming more and more. Initially, when developers build a platform, they build it for themselves, right? So they kind of, it was very developer friendly, and now it is moving to more and more, I would say, operator friendly as well. So that if you are a consumer, you are an operator, you can deploy it, and you have some kinds of tools that can help you. Okay. Then onboarding of services. Initially, anytime you wanted to bring up a service, it was a big effort. Now we are trying to provide recipes and make it easier and easier to onboard a service or a VNF. Initially, all these residential, enterprise, and mobile, they were kind of separate. Now all these services will be coming together, and you can, on the same platform, you can run those services on the same common platform. So that is another big accomplishment for us. And then rather than having a very few small set of services, now it looks like there is a portfolio of services. When you have 20, 25 services, you can call it a portfolio, and they do go across different domains of use. Okay, I should mention that there is a significant service provider traction. I mean, if you look at in terms of leading or whatever tier 1 service providers around the globe, almost every service provider has some or the other activity going on with CORD. Many of them have it in the labs at this point. In some cases, they are getting ready for field trial. And I wouldn't be surprised in 2018, a couple of tier 1 providers will call CORD in a production setting. So I think that would be a big accomplishment if in 2018 it does get into production setting of tier 1 providers. Okay, and the interest keeps going, and I think our goal in 2018 is really to drive it into production. Okay, so I think this is kind of the quick summary that Network Edge is undergoing a major transformation. CORD has definitely emerged as a compelling platform for the new Network Edge, and many service providers are already trialing it, at least in the lab setting, some in the field, and hopefully it will go into production. Okay, I think I'm going to spend hopefully the last 5-7 minutes on contributing to CORD, because end of the day, it's very, very important that community keeps participating and contributing, because we cannot move forward without your participation and your active contribution. So I think the way I would like to describe, of course I'm a biased party here, is CORD is something that is now ready to take off. You saw everything that we have done, all the service provider traction and all of that. So I think it is ready to take off, but I don't want you to think that it is ready in the sense of for production setting. Okay, there is still a lot of work to be done, and we want everything to help you contribute. Okay, so the whole idea of this event is for you to get to know what CORD is and where it is, but also for us to find out how we can help you contribute to CORD. Okay, so another way to show that a lot of work is ahead of us is today when you look at this, this is at best what can be thought of as the pre-alpha quality. Okay, that you can maybe, as I said, do a limited field trial, but it's by no means it's ready for production deployment. And to get to that point, the reproduction is not as good, but there is a lot of work to be done on features and functions, especially to make it ready for production. There is a lot of QA to be done. We don't do as much QA as necessary, and there's a lot of opportunities to do QA. Then there's a lot of customization. Because every provider has very specific needs, and we as a community so far have not been able to do much customization, and there is a lot of opportunities to do that. And then of course all the tools and support that is needed to support service providers in a production setting. So bottom line is there is all that work that is still ahead of us in order to take it to the production level. But if you are a developer, here is my pitch to you, that is, if you are a developer and you have not learned about CORD, you will find that CORD is a great opportunity for you to contribute, because it is intellectually very challenging and rewarding. There are many, many things. If you look at the service composition as an example, or when you are thinking about being able to take these pizza boxes where we have really transformed it and be able to recreate all those services on top of that, there are many very intellectually hard problems that one can solve. Latest technology in terms of, if you look at it all the way at the radio level, we are working with some of the latest radio technologies, to SDN control plane, to containerization and all of that, and then building services. Almost at every layer, you will find that we are working with some of the latest technologies, and that's what developers love, and we offer that. As I mentioned, the new edge, the edge of the network is going to have a huge impact. That's going to be pretty transformative. So if you work on it, you can see that it is really having an impact. Again, the way it is set up, with all the engagement of service providers, and service providers now wanting to do field trials and production deployment, I could say that if you contribute now, you almost have a shortest path to having an impact. And we like to believe we have a pretty fun global community. And so that is again something very important when you are wanting to contribute to an open source project. And that is something CORD has. I think I've already said idea to getting into the provider network, that is the most important thing. That is what we want to do. And we are trying to make it easier and maximize the probability of success. As you said, this is the model we follow. The solutions are already getting ready to be deployed in a service provider's network. And another thing, this is an idea that is very maybe unique to what our open source project is, the idea of this brigade. So we form these groups of people that they have an idea, they want to incorporate that idea into the platform, so they can form a brigade, come together, define the goal, define a schedule, work on it, contribute it, and it doesn't have to be very long lived. It can be 6 months, a year long, but that is how you can do very focused work. And with that focused work, you can have an impact very quickly, impact the platform and the use case of this. And in order to make sure that whatever work the brigades do that are relevant to service provider, what we are doing is we have set up something called use case steering team, which is representatives from all our service provider partners that are part of that use case steering team, so that when the brigades are getting formed or whatever work the brigades are doing, they are kind of guided by UCST. And so you know that the work you are working on is relevant to service providers and service providers care about it, and that is the way you can maximize the potential and the probability of impact. Okay, so my recommendation while you look at CORD and want to participate, these are some of the things you can do. Join an ongoing brigade and contribute. That may be the easiest way to get involved in the project and start contributing. And there are half a dozen brigades in CORD that are going on, and you should be able to participate and contribute. Okay. Then propose and lead a brigade. If you really have an idea, you really want to bring about a change in CORD or one of the services, you can propose the brigade, get it approved, form the team, and get that going. So that is another way you can participate. And then of course we have these open meetings that you can participate and influence and be able to bring your ideas into that. Last but not the least, please share your feedback during these 3 days. Almost all the ONF leadership is here. CORD TST is here, some of the UCST members are here. So almost all the right people are here during the next 3 days. And so if you have any kind of a feedback, we may not be doing something right, and I'm pretty sure there are many things we don't do well. And so please feel free to give us feedback, how we can improve, what we can do. There may be a use case that we may not be doing. There may be a feature or function that we may not be prioritizing. So please share your feedback, and love to have that.